All right, buckle up because we're bringing in Dave Menz right now. All right, so we're here with Dave. Dave, how's it going, man?
Good. How are you, Jordan?
I'm doing well. It's a little chilly here in California. It's like 55, and there's actually this water falling from the sky right now. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, that's called Ohio weather.
It's one of the reasons I don't live in Ohio then. So
yeah,
can't handle it.
Yeah, I understand.
Well, hey, thanks for being on the podcast. I'm really excited. You have such a really cool story, and I can't wait to hear a little bit more about it. And so let's start with, where are you? You're in Ohio, right? So tell us about that.
Yeah. We currently live in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm a transplant from Michigan, but we've lived in Cincinnati for probably over 30 years now. So I'm as much of an Ohioan as I am a Michigander, but I grew up in Michigan as a kid. So yeah, this is Cincinnati's home for me. There's no doubt about it.
But your heart is Michigan.
Well, for the Wolverines, yeah, definitely. But I love the city of Cincinnati. It's a great place to grow up and raise a family. This is home. I wouldn't live anywhere else.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, I'm super curious. I'm always curious about this. I get asked this question all the time. How did you get into the laundromat industry?
Well, dumb luck. I worked in corporate America for 17 years at the local phone company here in Cincinnati. Started out young in an entry-level position and worked my way through several different departments and learned a lot of different skills that I didn't realize I was learning along the way. But since I've been a little kid, my heart's been on entrepreneurship. And so throughout that whole career, I was always looking for different business opportunities. And sometimes opportunities would come up that I wasn't prepared for. Sometimes the opportunities weren't there and I was prepared.
Yeah.
Eventually those two paths kind of, crossed each other. And I found a local laundromat for sale in Amelia, Ohio, which is the community I grew up in. It's a suburb of Cincinnati. And I actually just found it on Craigslist. I was just stumbling around on Craigslist looking at businesses for sale, which I had done hundreds of times. And I knew exactly where the laundromat was. I knew nothing about the business, but it had been there forever. And so I immediately just jumped in my car and went down and took a look at it. And it was in very bad shape. This is in 2009. The economy wasn't very good and the place had been neglected for many, many years. And, one thing led to another. I did my due diligence. I went through the entire process. We didn't have a lot of money, but we had enough to kind of get going. And so we took out a small SBA loan and put a lot of sweat equity into it. And, we turned it around and I got the infection. So I realized, the laundromat business isn't a sexy business, but it's mine. And I've always been very passionate about entrepreneurship. And a big part of my passion of entrepreneurship is obviously supporting my family and making money. But as big of a part of it is really seeing and meeting a need within the community that's not being met. It's not about being that 30th pizza place on the corner. It's about seeing a need in the community and meeting that need. And I get a lot of satisfaction and gratification out of that, and knowing that I don't just work for money, but I work for something that's equally as important to me, if not more important than the money. And since I grew up here and I lived here, I knew that place used to be booming. It used to be bustling.
Right.
And it wasn't anymore. And it was kind of sad. As I went through my due diligence, I visited 9 different laundromats within about, 15 or 20 miles of that store. Every laundromat that existed, and every one of them were in bad shape. And that's when I realized there's a need, and this is a tremendous business opportunity.
Right. Yeah.
And I knew that I was willing to put in the work. I didn't have a ton of money. I basically started with about $20,000 in the bank and a decent job. We didn't have any debt, so we were low. I had good cash flow, and so we knew we could support it. And so I stayed at my full-time job for the next 5 years while we grew our businesses and just reinvested all the money that the businesses made back into them to continue to scale them and grow them. And here we are 10 years later.
Wow. That's crazy. And it's just so funny that you just found it on Craigslist and you weren't even particularly looking for a laundromat. You were just looking at businesses for sale.
Absolutely. It never even occurred to me to look for a laundromat. I was literally, Craigslist back then had a category that says businesses for sale. Yeah. And you click on it and it's just landscaping companies and car washes. I mean, every business on planet Earth, a daycare center.
Right.
And for me, I've always been a passionate entrepreneur, but I didn't really care what the product was.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by the business model, or different business models. I kind of geek out over those things.
Yeah.
And so as I dug in more and more, I realized that, there was an opportunity and there was a need. And it was really perfect for me because I knew, most likely whatever business I bought, I wouldn't be able to just quit my job the next week. And so that was it was unattended. And that was one of the few business models that would allow me to kind of do both. And so I would get up at 5 a.m., run by the laundromat for an hour or so, clean it up, sweep it up because it was open 24 hours. And I would go into work, which was an hour away. And I'd work all day, climbing telephone poles, working on the phone lines and stuff like that. And after I was all done with that, I would go back and stop back by on the way home. And I pretty quickly put a video surveillance system in there. And so when it got closer to bedtime, I would pull it up. And if it looked busy or whatever, then I'd run by there again before I went to bed.
Yeah.
And, now we have a completely different business model, but that's how we started, just simply out of necessity. We had no choice.
Yeah.
And those first 5 years that I was in business for myself, I kept my full-time job. And I estimate between the two, because we grew and acquired other businesses or other laundromats. And during that 5 years, I estimate I worked 90 to 100 hours a week for 5 years straight.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of a fog now, but I've always just been the type of person, just give me the opportunity and I'll just get out of my way.
Get it done. Yeah.
That's what I did, and I'll be honest, sometimes, a lot of times in entrepreneurship, a lot of people that aren't entrepreneurs like us, they don't really understand the drive, the motivation. So I took some critiques and, from family and friends and things like that. But I always knew what I was doing and why I was doing it. And I knew that I was on the right track and that I was going to make a difference in my community. And that was I've always been pretty good at ignoring the noise.
I love that. I mean, I think that's a crucial skill for an entrepreneur, business owner. There's so much negativity and even just pressure, to not go in those directions and to not stick it out when it's tough. And why are you spending 100 hours a week on this rundown laundromat? And it's probably not ever going to, just all these messages come in time and time again. So I love to hear that you started like that. Same way I started. I would drive an hour to go clean up my laundromat every single day, every night. I'd be there late at night a lot of times and, all of that. So I love to hear that you started like that. And I know that you scaled that way out and your business looks very, very different from that now. And I want to hear all about how you scaled that. But before we do, can you tell us just a little more detail about how you actually got that laundromat? How did the purchase of it go? And what did kind of that process look like? How'd you get into your first one?
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting story, actually, because I had never owned a business before and I was in my early 30s, I guess. Me and my wife didn't have a lot of debt. We both had decent jobs, but we had a young family and, we'd never owned a business. And, I put together a business plan because I'd always read that's what you do. And so I did my homework, did my due diligence. I put together the business plan. We felt we were personally in a good financial place. We had a little bit of money to invest, but certainly not enough to cover the whole thing. And it probably took every bit of 4 or 5 months. And I bet I applied to easily 20 or more financial institutions. And every single one of them told me the same thing. And they just said, you've never owned a business before. You got $20,000 in the bank. And you think you're going to take this business that isn't profitable because it was losing money. Mm-hmm. Who do you think you are is kind of the attitude that I got from them. If I was a veteran and more experienced like I'm nowadays, I'd have a little bit different story to tell. But back then I was just stuck in this, it's like when they tell kids, young kids, you should build credit when you start 18 years old. Well, how do I do that? Get some credit. Well, how do I get credit? You can't until you have credit. It was almost that vicious cycle. And I was very, very frustrated.
Yeah.
And when I looked into this model, I found a local distributor here in Cincinnati called HM Company. And they're a hips distributor. They've been around since the 1950s. They're a phenomenal distributor. And I had already built a relationship with them over the few months. And so I talked to them regularly about my struggles and he kind of acted as a mentor to me in a lot of ways. And I'll never forget one night on the phone, I had probably been rejected for the 18th time, and I'm telling him, and I'm frustrated, and I don't have it in my nature to give up, but I was frustrated. And he asked me, he was like, well, what are you going to do? And I said, Steve, if I have to apply to 1,000 banks, eventually somebody is going to say yes, because I'm not ever going to stop. Like I've decided this is what I'm going to do. I feel very confident. We were taking out a loan that was, I don't know, roughly 80,000 maybe. And we didn't know we were going to need to buy all this equipment. We didn't know a lot of what we know nowadays, but we knew we were going to borrow some money and invest. But our SBA note, when we finally ended up getting the loan, it was like $1,400, $1,500 a month. Finally, I went to a local credit union that I had a relationship with, and they were trying to grow their business department. Mm-hmm. And I had done business with them for years personally. And so I sat down and talked to them, and I said, look, here's my personal finances. We have no debt except for our house. We have a pretty good revenue, or a pretty good, household income. Our personal cash flow, we can easily support this note for the entire length of the note personally. Yeah. So if this business, I feel like I'm like going into the sales pitch, but it was the honest truth. It was how I actually saw it. And finally, like, it just clicked with them, and they were like, you'd be willing to do that? And I'm like, you have no idea. Like, I'll be willing to do anything that is legal or ethical. Those are the only two lines I won't cross to be successful. And they gave it to me eventually, but it was a long road, and it was exhausting. 3 or 4 months doesn't sound like a long time, but when you're living it and you're working a full-time job and you're spending your lunch hour calling banks and applying and sending emails, and and I worked out in the field. So, I wasn't in an office. It wasn't always easy to do.
Yeah.
And you can't call them on the weekends. So, you really have, like, it was a long 3 or 4 months, but one of my biggest strengths is that I am stubborn to a fault. As a little kid, I wouldn't want to raise me. As a little kid, it wasn't always a good thing. But as an adult, I found that if I channel it for good versus evil, that I'm able to accomplish a lot more than I ever dreamed that I could. And so it's really just taking my dreams and just taking them to a whole new level. But it wasn't easy. And I don't know how many people would have given up. I just knew that I wasn't going to.
Yeah.
So yeah. It was kind of a crazy time. It wasn't smooth.
But I find that is a lot of people's experience when they get into business, any kind of business really, is that it's the people who are willing to do the crazy, it's crazy that you called 20, banks, and you had to do it on your lunches in between, jobs. And it's crazy that after you got the business, you went there every day at 5 a.m. You'd go at night sometime. Like, those things are crazy, but it's that tenacity and that just, this is what I'm doing. This is who I am now. This is what I'm doing, and it's just going to happen. And I'm going to just keep going until I make it happen. And I think that's a huge key to success. I'm sure it's a huge key to your success.
It is, absolutely. And sometimes I think back, I ironically enough, in kindergarten, when they ask all the kids, what do you want to be when you grow up, at like your little graduation, little Johnny says Batman and this guy says a police officer. And I said, I wanted to own my own business. I didn't know what an entrepreneur was, but I said, I want to own my own business. And all the adults were like, oh, that's cute. Because back then, that wasn't near as in vogue as it is nowadays. It wasn't near as cool to be an entrepreneur or a business owner back then. And so they all thought it was cute. But I don't know if you're born an entrepreneur or not. All I know is that's just where my mind and my heart and my drive has always went. And when I finally had the opportunity, and I knew I had, the right thing and the right opportunity in front of me, and I'm in my, early 30s and I'm married with a family. Sometimes I wonder how would I have responded to that opportunity when I was 19 or 20? Mm-hmm. Because I was the same guy, but I was certainly at a different place in life. Mm-hmm. And, fun was a lot more important to me than setting up myself for success or serving my community or yeah. So, that's just the reality. So sometimes I wonder. I really, I'm happy and blessed, and part of it too is I didn't go to college. I started working right out of high school and worked at an entry-level position at Cincinnati, and I worked there for 17 years. And during the time that I worked there, I worked in sales. marketing. I worked in the skilled trades outside, learning how to use tools. I learned so many skills through working in those departments that I had no idea I was learning.
Yeah.
And every single one of those are directly attributable to how I learned my business. It's amazing to me that I was being prepared. I absolutely believe that was the case. And it's fun to look back, and it's kind of humbling at the same time. Obviously, I'm living my dream. There was no other way to put it.
The laundromat dream.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but I have people ask, guys talk and they say, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" And, my first response is either I'm an entrepreneur or I'm a business owner. People are always fascinated by that. They're so impressed. They think that's been fantastic.
Yeah.
Next question they ask is, so what kind of business are you in? And I tell them I own laundromats, and they go, "Oh."
Huh. Yeah.
And they always have this look on their face like, "I thought you were a real business owner."
Yeah. Yeah.
And I used to kind of take offense to it, and it kind of was a shot to the heart a little bit. Now I'm pretty used to it. But I realized, a big part of my opportunity for the business and the industry that we're in is that it's not sexy.
Yeah.
Because if it were sexy, then there would be a lot more people attracted to it. But it's amazing how many people avoid this industry because it's not sexy.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a negative connotation associated with a laundromat in general. So when you say the word laundromat, most people don't think of my stores. And so the flip side of that is we get people walking in our stores every day and they're like, "I've never seen a laundromat like this."
This is awesome.
And you talk to the top operators in the industry, they all hear the same thing, that top 10% or whatever it is. They constantly hear that because it's the bottom, 60% that people automatically associate, the dungeons and the basements, and, half the equipment doesn't work, and there's a homeless guy sleeping in the corner, and, it's unsafe and all these things. So that's where people go with it. But there, as there's a whole different side to the industry, which is very modern and becoming more modernized every day.
Yeah.
Operations are I wouldn't say overly complicated, but they're not as simplistic as a lot of laundromat operations are. And one of the things I love the most about being a business owner is I get to decide what my business is. No one gets to decide that for me. Mm-hmm. And so there's more than one way to run a successful laundromat. It's not necessarily the way I do it. This is just how I've evolved and my team has built. But I'm pretty passionate about our industry.
Well, that's awesome. Okay. So you got your first laundromat. How long did it take? Because you own 4 right now. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So how long did it take you to get to your next one and then your next couple? And then just tell us a little bit about what your business looks like today.
Mm-hmm. So that's also a little bit of a funny story. So we take on this big debt loan that we'd never done, this big opportunity, this industry we don't know. And within 5 or 6 months, we had, put a lot of sweat equity into our business. And business within 7 or 8 months had doubled and almost tripled. And it wasn't doing a lot, so it wasn't hard to double or triple it.
Right.
But at the same time, I kind of caught a bug, and I was like, I knew this would work. And so I immediately start talking to my distributor, and I'm like, I want to get another one. I want to have 20. I want to have 30. I want to have 40. And that's my nature. I'm very ambitious.
Yeah.
And so the whole time he's like, Dave, you're doing fantastic, but slow down. Like, take a deep breath, slow down. You don't want to move too fast. Well, once again, I've never been a good listener. That's just not my nature. And so I couldn't not look for other opportunities, even though I had no money. Everything I had was poured into that store.
Right.
And I ended up finding my second store, and it was in it was in a strip mall. The laundromat was abandoned. It had been closed by the previous owner, but it was in a great location. And ironically, it was 20 minutes from my home, where the other one was 5 minutes from my home. Uh-huh. But it was 20 minutes from my home in the direction of my job.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, I know this community because it's not that far away. It was a great opportunity. I literally got the laundromat for, what they say, free laundromat.
The mythical free laundromat.
Right. Free laundromat that comes with a lot of headache. But yeah, so I walked in, and it was a cesspool. The owner of the strip mall had a albatross on their hands, and they knew it.
Yeah.
And I just approached them and said, I'm in the business. I have a location over in Amelia. I didn't tell them how long I had it.
Right.
I know what I'm doing. I think this is a great location. if you're basically willing to sign me to a long-term lease, this is what I'm going to do. And I had no idea how I was going to do it. I just knew that I didn't have any money to buy another store. And I also knew that once again, it would be unattended. It would be open 24 hours and I would need to stop by it regularly while I'm commuting. Yeah. So I thought, man, for the situation I'm in, I mean, this seems like it would work. It'll double my workload from too much already. But I've always been a firm believer in business that when opportunities come about, like you don't get to choose when the opportunities come about. You just choose whether you take advantage of them or not.
Yep.
And so it ended up being about 8 or 9 months after we had bought our first store that we had the second store. And we signed a lease and we were able to, I mean, it was in such bad shape, like none of the equipment in there was really useful. So we were able to work out a loan because we were in the business now. Mm-hmm. We were able to work out a manufacturer's loan for the financing of the equipment. And we put all new equipment in there. And we took, the cash flow that we were getting from our one store that was making some money, and we would put that into it. And me and my father-in-law and some friends just did twice the amount of sweat equity in that store we did in our first store, because I literally just had money for materials. And we ended up maxing out our credit card. I mean, it was, we pushed it to the limit.
For it, yeah.
And we went from, our personal finances are very conservative. I mean, we were debt free except for our house. We had a pretty good savings. We had really good cash flow personally. And so this was very out of the ordinary for how me and my wife typically run our financial life. But I just saw it as different from personal life. I'm not doing this to buy a car or an ATV or a boat. I'm doing this to buy an asset. And so I felt that risk was worth it for that reason. And so we acquired it. We kept it closed for 4.5, 5 months. And literally I stopped by there every day and worked until I couldn't work anymore and went home and slept. And I, had a lot of friends and family step up and help me, and some would just help for a day or two, which was appreciated. And some would help every weekend. Mm-hmm. And, I still to this day, that place holds a special place in my heart within my portfolio, just because I know the amount of, blood, sweat, and tears and love that went into that. These people didn't ask anything from me. They were just like, wow, Dave's going to do this. He's crazy, but I'm here for you, man. Yeah, right. Exactly. And so I'm sometimes amazed what we accomplished with as little resources as we had. It helped that it was a small store. Mm-hmm. It was like 2,100 square feet, maybe not even that. And so that's how we acquired our second store. And so my story is we acquired 2 stores in less than a year.
Yeah, that's crazy.
We opened that store and we had a pretty significant loan for the equipment. And so part of it was, okay, well, we got to get this thing to break even, quickly if we can. Yeah. And it was profitable within 3 weeks.
Whoa, that's awesome.
It had been closed for 6 months before we took over it, and then we kept it closed for another year. So once again, that tells you the demand in the area. We had people while we're in there working, knocking on the doors, asking if they can come in. Yeah. And we're like, there's literally no washers in here. Like, what? And so we, as we continued on with the project, the buzz kind of spread in the neighborhood. We knew there was a need. As soon as we opened the doors, they just came in droves.
Just flooded in.
Yeah. It was profitable immediately. So that was how we acquired our second store, which was definitely a unique situation. After that, I had the bug twice as bad. And so I continued to look and never really found the right opportunity. And several years went by, and it probably ended up being a good 3 or 4 more years. And we just kept reinvesting everything the business has made back into our 2 businesses to grow them. And at this point, I realized this could be like a career. This could be my full-time gig. Right. And I could actually someday quit my job. And so then I just dug in even harder. And I was like, you know what, if I dig really hard and I'm very disciplined and I reinvest and I keep my hand out of the cookie jar and keep my lifestyle the same and all these things, in a few years, I'll be able to leave my job. And so I was more motivated than ever before. And people thought I was more crazy than ever before because, people are saying things like, well, how much money do you need, Dave? It's like, you don't get it. Like this isn't about like buying a boat. Like, yeah, it's about like changing my family tree at this point.
Yes.
And, so I ended up around those 2 businesses. We eventually added a few part-time attendants that would do a little cleaning that were actually on payroll at this point. And that helped a little. And I reached out to an old friend from high school that actually lived right up the road from my second store. And she still lived there. And she was married and had a kid. We had kind of lost touch. And I remember from our days right out of high school that she was one of the hardest working people I've ever met in my life. And she was high integrity, high character, high energy. She was loyal. And she had worked, basically when she got out of high school, she had worked at a server at a restaurant. And over her career, she had worked her way up in 17 years, and she was the manager of this restaurant now. Mm-hmm. And I reached out to her and I said, all right, this is my dream. This is what I'm going to do. We hadn't talked in 15 years. And I said, I'm building this chain of laundromats, and I know I can't do this all on my own. And I want you to come do this with me. I want you to be my manager. And we talked, and I think she thought I was half crazy. But long story short, I've always been really good at selling my dream. It's something I'm, really good at. Most people are. And so she eventually came around and she said, well, since you have attendants that just work 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the evening, I'm going to keep my full-time job and just work as an attendant for a few days and, do that for a few months and see if I like it. And then I'll make a decision. And I said, okay, that's fair. So I brought her in literally making $9 an hour, and she's got another full-time job, and she worked third shift at this Perkins restaurant and was the overnight manager. And she would work all night, and she would stop on her way home and work for 3 hours for me and clean the store in the morning and then go home and have her life. And so she did this for, several months. And it eventually got to the point where I said, all right, I want to bring you on full time. And we couldn't afford to hire her full time. So we slowly but surely gave her more and more hours. And I was reinvesting pretty heavily in her, basically. Yeah. But I knew I couldn't do it alone, and I needed a manager. And so long story short, her restaurant actually got bought by the state, and they were putting a highway through. And so she would have lost her career. Yeah. And about that time was the time we were acquiring our third store. And so I said, all right, timing's perfect. We're going to bring you on full time. And the rest is kind of history. She's still my GM to this day.
Whoa, cool.
She's been with me for 8 years now. She is a rock star, and that is probably not even a fair statement for her value to me personally and our family. She is family to us at this point. Mm-hmm. And she makes way more than she ever made at her other job now. And one of the things I promised her is, if you'll do this with me and you'll stick with me, I can't afford to pay you much right now, but as our business grows, I will compensate you more every chance I get. And there was times where I gave her multiple raises in a short period of time. And, so I kept my word. I did what I could do. And I could have accomplished what I've accomplished without her, but I would have needed someone like her. Yeah. But I wouldn't have taken on the tasks that we have without her specifically. I know my nature. I know like, if I didn't have her along my side, I wouldn't have done this. I wouldn't have attempted to. And so it's, she's a big part of our team, and we're the same age. We're both 43. And so it's pretty exciting to have kind of worked together and built this over the last 10 years. And we really feel like this is kind of the tip of the iceberg of where we're going to go. But long story short, once I hired her, we ended up purchasing a third store. And that store had a drop-off laundry service, and it was a complete dump as well. Also in a great location. And so one of the decisions we had to make is, okay, we don't do drop-off services at our other stores. Right. Are we going to it wasn't much of a drop-off. It was pretty rough the way it was ran. I said, all right, I can't run it like that. I'm going to have to completely revamp it, put policies and procedures and training and all this stuff in place, or I'm just going to shut it down the day we close. And I talked with Marlene, and we thought through it, and I talked with my wife, Carla, and I decided, okay, we're going to transition from being partially attended or almost unattended to now we're going to be attended. We want to have fully attended stores. And so we knew that we needed every ounce of revenue we could get. And so we decided to keep the drop-off laundry open. And so about 2 weeks before we closed on the third store, I quit my job. Whoa. And Marlene came on full time. And so things got real really quick.
Yeah, they did.
I mean, we had prepared for this for 3 or 4 years. So it wasn't a quick decision, but it got real really quick. Things got really tight. All of a sudden, calling out that plumber, but it used to be no big deal. Holy cow, I'm going to pay this guy, that kind of stuff. And we revamped the drop-off service, and it did really well and continues to this day. And that really changed our path in the laundromat business, because we not only transitioned from unattended to attended, which is a big difference,
Right.
but we also, added it took a little while, but we added a pretty high quality drop-off laundry service. And we charge $1.50 a pound now, and we'll probably be raising our prices in the next few weeks.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, yeah, we're kind of near the top of the industry when it comes to, costs. Of what we can charge per pound, where a lot of people are still charging $1, $1.10 a pound, or less in some areas. And so, once we did that, we realized, okay, let's back up and go back to the second store we bought, and let's start a drop-off laundry service there. Once we got this one perfected, then I moved Marlene back to this store, and we built a drop-off laundry service there, and she managed all three stores basically from that one site. And we grew that drop-off laundry service. And a few years after that, we acquired our fourth store. And it was the same thing. It was really run down. It happened to be a huge facility. It was kind of it's like 5,200 square feet, but it's one of these deals where it was two businesses on one. It was a dry cleaner on one side and a laundromat on the other. So only half of it has the laundromat footprint. The other side was basically a huge drop dry cleaning. So they didn't have equipment, but it was a huge facility. And so when I approached them about acquiring it, they were like, well, you got to take all the space. I'm like, but I don't need all the space. I don't want all the space.
Yeah. And
we worked out a deal where he gave me a pretty sweetheart deal on the rent on the other side. And I said, all right, I'm going to acquire this. And we revamped the drop-off laundry service there. And, fast forward to what we're doing nowadays. Now we have a pretty high volume laundry pickup and delivery business called HappyNest. And the funny thing is, like, when we acquired that location, we thought we had all this like wasted, unused space. And we've been doing our HappyNest for about 3.5 years now. And it's grown to the point where it generates double the revenue of our store. It's all run out of this one store.
Wow.
And so now we have successful drop-off laundry services at 3 of our 4 stores. We have a general manager, which is Marlene, and she has roughly 40 employees that report to her. We have 3 trucks on the road for our delivery business. And we do about 25 to 30,000 pounds a month in just delivery. And that's at $1.89, $1.99 a pound. And so I always tell people the beauty of the pickup and delivery business is you take an already successful business model of a laundromat, and then you take another successful model and you lay it on top of it, but you leverage the same infrastructure.
Yeah.
When you do that, it turns a $300,000 laundromat into $1 million laundromat.
Yeah.
We're still running it with one employee, one manager. And so our general manager, Marlene, is also the store manager at that store. That's where she spends most of her time. She manages probably over half of our employees out of that one facility. We have a third shift production crew that processes the laundry overnight while the store is closed to the public. And so once again, we're leveraging that infrastructure. Most laundromats, if they're open 24 hours, they don't do much business. Most aren't open at all, so they don't do any business.
Right.
We probably generate more revenue. Well, we definitely do more revenue when we're closed than when we're open.
Yeah.
So I tell people, I'm like, I wasn't smart enough to plan this all out 10 years ago. It just kind of evolved, and I just followed my passion. And, I bounced a lot of stuff off of my wife, who's a, professional school teacher, and she's not an entrepreneur. She'll be the first to tell you that.
Yeah.
But we're a really great team because she actually has a background in accounting. That's her degree. And so she does all of her bookkeeping and all of her accounting and keeps all that straight, which I could never do. And as we've grown the business, it went from just like a little side business of a few $1,000s a week. And now we're, a multi-million-dollar operation. And we have, we've created 40 jobs that didn't exist 10 years ago.
Yeah.
We have, I always say, we weren't always in this position, but I'd put my team up against anyone in the country at this point. We've invested heavily in operations and in people. We really believe you can have a great product. You can have brand new machines and fancy this and free Wi-Fi and all that, which is important in a modernized laundromat. But the thing that will really separate you from your competition 99 out of 100 times is having operations with the level that you take them to. Yeah. And so me and Marlene and my wife have taken that very, very seriously. And, here we are 10 years later. And like I said, me, my wife, Marlene, we're all 43 years old. And we feel like we have a really good foundation. We have a history of running unattended laundromats, transitioning them into attended, building a drop-off service from the ground level, not knowing anything about it, and learning through the school of hard knocks and networking with other laundromat owners throughout the industry. And then the drop-off laundry service has just like shot us to the moon and beyond. And one of the things we've learned, or not the drop-off, but the pickup and delivery. Uh-huh. And one of the things we've learned in 3 years with pickup and delivery is when we started that business, we really just thought it would be an ancillary income, buy a van, go pick up some laundry, and our drop-off will grow. And we really didn't think a whole lot more into that, but everything I do well. I mean, I'm 150 miles an hour and everything. I'm kind of a perfectionist. And because of those things, I kind of met the market at the society at this perfect place where they were kind of melding into what I call the Amazon economy. And everybody wants full service, everything right to their door. Yep. And we were perfectly positioned. The 7 years prior, we had been building a team for this business that we had no idea we were even going to run someday. And we were building, we had invested heavily in all new equipment. I mean, probably $2 million worth of equipment between our 4 stores. And, those notes get pretty heavy at times. And so my thing was, okay, how can I, without buying a 5th and a 6th and an 8th business, how can I leverage my current assets? And that's where, marketing our drop-off services at our stores, being attended, just transitioning from unattended to attended. And, it took a year and a half and 2 years, but our business doubled just by making that transition. And one of the things we've learned in the industry is there's nothing wrong with running an unattended mat. Don't get me wrong. But one of the things we've learned is that when you transition from unattended to attended, there is a whole different segment of society that will now use your facility. Mm-hmm. That was a deal breaker. They would, no matter how nice it was, they will not use your facility if you're unattended. Period. End of story. And we didn't know that. I mean, we learned that just by trial and error. Yeah. So we've just, over the course of 10 years, we've just taken all this experience and knowledge and a lot of stubbing our toes and a lot of stress and grief and headache and worry, and transitioned it into something that, I'm literally living my dream. And I've created jobs for these people that didn't used to have jobs. And some of them are entry level, but a lot of, probably over half of them are not. Probably close to half of our staff makes $5 to $6 above minimum wage, and some of them make double or more minimum wage. And so, I'm pretty proud of that. A lot of them are part-time, but they're part-time because they want to be.
Right.
That's their decision. But a lot of them have transitioned from part-time to full-time. And so I get a lot of satisfaction out of, yes, supporting my family and, being an entrepreneurial geek and just doing what I do every day. But I get a lot of satisfaction out of knowing that I'm serving the community. The east side of Cincinnati was just, when it comes to laundry facilities, it was in shambles at one point. Mm-hmm. And now we have 4 of the top stores in the state, probably, as far as the quality of operations and the quality of the facilities. And to back up, our second store that was a small 2,100 square foot store, right. Is in a strip mall. We eventually tore down the wall in between it and the space next door. And now it's about 4,500 square feet.
Wow.
So it's our second, it went from being our smallest to our second biggest store. And so I always say that project, which was a lot, and I managed it myself. That was a lot. I learned a ton through that process of building a laundromat, even though I've never technically built a laundromat.
Yeah.
So now we're in the process of actually building a laundromat, our 5th. And so now I'm applying a lot of those skills and the things I learned with that project. So I've always joked that I owned 4 laundromats, but it was actually 5, because the one that I kind of doubled the size of, it was basically like buying or building a new laundromat.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was a different set of challenges. But, we feel like our operations and our experience and our age, like we're perfectly positioned to do much more than we've done in our first 10 years in the next 20.
Yeah.
Now we're, we really focus on 2 things. Now we focus on, serving the industry and giving back. And, I do some consulting and things like that and helping people when I can. And I also focus on, meeting the needs of other communities, finding other opportunities. I've probably turned down 10 or 15 laundromats that people approach me about, but they were either in a market that was already served or in a market that didn't need one. There's 2,000 people there or something like that.
Right.
And so I've turned down a lot of opportunities too. And so now I'm really looking for new opportunities and new markets throughout Cincinnati and maybe even outside of Cincinnati, to continue to serve the community. And now we've kind of settled in on this, good, better, best business model, because we used to just be a self-serve laundromat.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had a drop off, and now we offer pickup and delivery. And so we have this good, better, best model, and they're all a different clientele, a different segment of the market that still all has a specific need.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty exciting to me. If you had told me this where I would be 10 years ago, I never would have believed you, and certainly no one that knew me would have ever believed this. But it's just good old fashioned tenacity.
Well, you know what? Hindsight's 2020. I mean, as I'm listening to your story, it's so fascinating, because what I'm hearing is you just stacking stuff on top of each other. Like, you had this idea of yourself wanting to be a business owner. And so you had kind of that vision, and then you kind of stumbled on this laundromat, and then you had the tenacity. So you just went for it, and you found a way to get it. And then you found a way to make it work. And then you did it again, again with this tenacity and just, expanding kind of your vision and what's possible, and just being an action taker and doing it. And then you're learning along the way, how to do different things. And then you're applying it and growing and growing. And, you built out this half of your second laundromat, and you're using that now to build out your fifth laundromat. And it's just pretty cool to see. I think a lot of times when people want to get into business, they see where you're at, and they're like, well, I want to do that. But what they don't see is the 5 years where you were working 100 hours a week, and people were telling you, no, we're not going to give you any money. We don't believe in you, essentially, is what the banks are saying. We don't believe in you.
Yes.
Your friends are telling you that you're crazy, and your family is like, oh man, here he goes again. He's buying another one or whatever. And yet, people want what you have, but in order to get there, you gotta pay the price to get there. You gotta learn what you need to learn, because there's no way, I can almost guarantee you, that if somebody was just going to hand you your portfolio that you have now, back when you first started, and said, here are these 4 laundromats and you're building one, that it would have just all gone to waste. You would have been able to handle it, because you didn't have everything that you have. And so I love hearing your story, because I just love hearing you stack all of these skills. And
honestly, it wasn't, obviously it wasn't by design. It was intentional, but it wasn't by design. Like 10 years ago, I never knew that I would do this. But one of the things I've always done in my life is I've never been afraid to pivot. Like I've never believed just because that's what I used to do that I have to keep doing that. I've always built my foundation of my family, my faith, and my businesses from a foundation of character, a foundation of just simply doing the right thing and following the path, whatever path that is, and not trying to, force things that don't come. And that's why I've always really focused on meeting needs in the community that are already there. Nobody's doing it. Why wouldn't I do it? And if you can do it and make money, it's very, very satisfying.
Yeah. That's so cool. It's so cool to hear that. I'd love to just take a second and just get down to business a little bit, and just hear a little bit of just, the baseball card stats of your businesses.
Let's get down to business. Over and out.
So we already know that you're in Ohio, you're in Cincinnati area. And you have 4 laundromats, and you're building a 5th.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think you mentioned at one point, maybe to me beforehand, that you have some real estate too. Is that the case?
Yeah, we have one commercial property. It's the building that our 3rd store is in.
Okay.
We acquired that store. It was in a standalone building. And so when we approached the owner of the building, which was a separate person, about signing a long-term lease, they had inherited the building from their dad, and it was paid for. And they didn't really want to be in commercial property.
Right.
And so they were like, well, we're okay to talk about that, but would you be interested in buying the building? Well, yeah, of course. Are you crazy? So yeah, we acquired the business with a lease, and 2 months later we closed on the building. And so now we own this commercial property. And if we ever sell the business, we still have the revenue from the commercial property, because if we ever sell the business, it's going to be sold at a pretty good multiple to somebody that can drive the business and support it. And one of the things we've learned through that too is that that's a pretty profitable long-term business venture, just the real estate holdings alone. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things we focused on is now, our fourth store, when we acquired it, it's in a small strip mall, about 10,000 square feet. And when we signed a long-term lease for that, we got right of first refusal for 30 years to purchase the strip mall. And so the owner that has it right now still doesn't want to sell, but he's getting up there in age, and he's going to be selling eventually. And when he does, we'll acquire that and then actually have some tenants other than ourselves. And we actually were just approached recently from one of our competitors about purchasing their business, because we've kind of put a big hurting on them over the last 10 years through our growth. And they're in a standalone building as well. And they own that property, and they want to sell us that building. And so now that we're like perfectly positioned to meet a lot of these needs, all of a sudden we have many opportunities coming our way. And so a big part of our business model over the rest of my life is to find ways to focus on multiple revenue streams. And that includes acquiring the real estate and the depreciation and things that come along with owning and building a real estate portfolio. And so someday we will either, back out of the business when we're, in our rocking chair days. We'll back out of the business, keep the real estate as investments, which is pretty much passive at that point. Or we'll just pass the businesses on to our kids if they're interested. And then they'll be we can mentor them through the process, and they will be our tenants. And when we're someday gone, then they will inherit the buildings, and it will just create this multi-family or multi-generational business model. If they're interested, we're not ones to pressure them or focus on that. But they know that opportunity is there if they want to go take it, but they also know we're not going to give it to them. Like, that's not in my future. Nothing was given to me, and nothing's going to be given to you. Till I'm gone.
That's right.
And so now I take like this step back and kind of have this like 30,000 foot view of what I've created, but the opportunity I have over the next 20 or 30 years, which includes continuing to grow the business, continuing to diversify the business in different ways. My 21-year-old daughter works full time in the business now, and I don't know if she always will, but she does right now. And that's really exciting to see where she grows as she matures. And my 12-year-old is already talking about he wants to run the whole empire. And so we'll see how that works out. I don't know if it'll be a fight, but we'll make it work. But that's a whole new level of just like love, like just loving what I do, knowing that whether that happens or not, that I put my family in a position where that could happen.
Yeah, I think that's
so. Cool. The future is pretty exciting for us.
One of the things, just a little side note, one of the things I did with my son is I told him, hey, if you save up your money and you buy a little like bubblegum machine or whatever, you can put it in the store and I'll teach you how to run that like a business. He's 8 right now. And so he saved his money. And actually the story is really sad. He saved his money. My buddy made him like a cool little stand for it. We bolted it into the ground. We did a little like ceremony for him. And that night, some guy came in high on something and literally just ripped it out into that night, same night, and took it. So that was his first foray into business.
Oh my goodness. That's heartbreaking.
Yeah, I know. But it's good because that again, those are lessons that he's learning. And one of the things I want to do is, whether he ends up taking over our laundromats or whatever, I don't know, we're a long time from that, hopefully, but trying to just teach him, here's how business works. If you want to go into business for yourself, doing laundromats or anything else, here's how you manage your finance. You don't just get all this money from your bubblegum machine and get to spend it all, because you got to buy inventory and you want to have money to reinvest and all this stuff. So it's been It's funny that you tell that story, because I have a similar one. I don't know if we have time for it, but I'll make it real quick. So my daughter, when we got into the business, I had the exact same mindset. I was like, I want my kids to learn that there's nothing wrong with having a job and working for an employer, but I also want them to know there's more than one way to make a living. And if it's for them, that's fine, but I want them to get the lesson in life.
And so my daughter, who is not an entrepreneur by nature at all, she will tell you that. She was probably 10 or 12 maybe at the time. And I basically said, she had some savings. And I said, this is what we're going to do. And I basically told her she was going to do it. And we bought a sticker machine that vends the little kid stickers.
Yeah.
And so she used her savings, bought a sticker machine. She ended up taking that one and buying a second one. And my current 12-year-old, who is mini me, like born entrepreneur, when he was 5, he calls her TT. And when she was 5, he heard us talking one day that she had made $100 the previous month off of her sticker machine. He's always been one to nose into everything. And he looked at us at 5 years old and he said, well, I want to own a sticker machine. And I said, well, we actually just bought a third laundromat. If you save up the money, then you can buy a sticker machine and you can put it in our third store. And that little boy for 3.5 years saved every penny he could find. Birthday money, he would be out shoveling driveways when it was 9 degrees out. He's 6 and saving the money, and he would sell things that he didn't want anymore. And the machine was $400 and the inventory was about $200.
Yeah.
So it was about a $600 investment for a 5-year-old. I mean, that's like $1 million.
That is like $1 million.
Long story short, my daughter was successful. She got the lesson. When she went off to college, my son had bought his first machine and had just saved up for his second machine. And so he bought her 2 locations from her.
That's awesome.
So at this point, he's probably 9 and he has 3 sticker machines in 3 stores, but we've just acquired a 4th store. So he takes the revenue from the 3, puts a sticker machine in the 4th, and about 6 to 8 months ago, he took the revenue from all 4 of those sticker machines and bought a claw machine that he's now put in our store. And so me and my wife joke all the time that we're like, he's going to be like the only 16-year-old pulling into school like in a BMW.
Yeah.
And everybody's going to be like, oh yeah, look what mommy and daddy bought you. And we'll be like, no, he actually paid cash.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's why I joke with people all the time. All 3 of my kids are very smart, capable of anything they want. But he is 100% entrepreneur. Yeah. And that lesson, with her, I kind of had to encourage and push her into that lesson. With him, he drug me into it. And so it's been fascinating to see
cool.
Him get that message. And he has a little brother that isn't an entrepreneur probably, but he listens and he hears and he learns.
Yeah.
And so we'll see where that goes with our kids and how that works out in life. But for me, it's all about the lesson. That's what it is. So that's awesome to hear that somebody else is doing that.
Oh,
Usually I tell people that story and they're like, wow, that's fantastic. I've never heard anything like that.
Yeah.
And I think you're the first one that's been like, yeah, I'm basically doing the same thing.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking that it got broken into, but like you said, there's also kind of a lesson in that. So
yeah.
You had to be curious.
Yeah. Oh man, I haven't seen that guy since, and it's probably a good thing. But what I ended up doing, so we had some conversations about that, and it was good. He was sad, obviously, but what I ended up doing was saying, I'm going to buy another gumball machine for you, but you still have to pay for it. So I ended up getting an opportunity to teach him about how to use a loan to buy an asset like you did, and to do it in a wise way. And I said, you'll just give me a little bit every month from what your gumball machine makes until it's paid off, and then it'll go. So and I make them do a split. I make them pay me to have his gumball machine like all the other vendors that we have in our stores. But I'm just saving that, and that'll probably go to school or whatever later.
That's fantastic. Good for you.
Pretty cool though. All right, back to business.
Sure.
Give us like a feel of vending prices in Cincinnati. How much is it costing to do, a few various types of sizes of loads?
Yeah, it depends. We're definitely a high price leader. We are definitely significantly above our competitors. I mean, our competitors are probably more in line with, the market across the country, which tends to be, too low. Not enough people are aggressive enough raising their prices and charging probably what they should for the level of service they provide. But I have some competitors that are in really rough shape that are still vending top loaders for $1.50.
Yeah.
Mine are $3.
Yeah.
I'm literally charging double. And we probably won't have top loaders in the future, but right now we do. But we aren't afraid to charge what we feel is a top of the market vend price for them. We have 20-pound machines that we vend for $4. We have 40-pound machines that we vend for $6, and we have 80-pound machines that we vend for $10. $10. And then on the 40s, 60s, and 80s, we have the extra wash, extra rinse functions. And on the 40s, the extra wash and extra rinse is $1 each.
Yeah.
And on 60, where a lot of people are still like doing quarters. And on the 60s and 80s, the extra wash and extra rinse is $2 each. And when I tell people that, they're like, "Are you insane? Like, I've never heard of anybody charging more than 50 cents for an extra wash. Like, it's 8 loads of laundry. Like,
that's a lot of water.
Yeah, I mean, you're cutting yourself short if you're doing that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just like, because they can charge by quarter increment pricing, they do.
Yeah.
And we converted 2 of our 4 stores from quarter over to dollar coin.
Okay.
And that's part of the reason our prices are set up that way. But now, even at our quarter stores, everything is done in dollar pricing.
Yeah.
If we raise the price, we raise 50 cents or $1.
Yeah.
And if we do 50 cents, it's when we convert the store to dollar coin, it's going to go up by another 50 and be rounded up. And then our dryers, the dollar coin stores are $1. On the 30-pound dryers, they're $1 for $1 for 24 minutes, which is a quarter for 6 minutes.
Uh-huh.
And 45-pound dryers are $1 for 16 minutes, or a quarter for 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And so we're actually evolving and working our dryer pricing over to full cycle pricing, which is, I know a lot of people that have done it with great success.
Yeah.
So that's something we're working on in the future. But in my opinion, if you run a halfway decent laundromat, let alone a really nice, modern, top of the industry mat,
mm-hmm.
if your self-serve prices aren't 15 cents a pound or higher, like, you're cutting yourself short.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, they're like, "Yeah, but my competitors," I have competitors too. We had somebody build a brand new store as a distributor, not mine, but a different one, build a brand new store. Our 4 stores are kind of in a triangle of each other, all within 15 miles.
Uh-huh.
They're not that far away. Somebody built a brand new store right in the middle of our 4 stores and started out with a vend price of $1 for a 20-pound machine as like a loss leader. 2 years later, they're still charging that price because they can't capture any market share.
Mm-hmm.
Our 20-pounders are $4. Theirs are $1, and they can't take customers from us.
Jeez.
And so that's when I go back to what I said earlier. If I put my team up against anyone, a lot of times it comes back to the people and the training and the operations and the processes and the support and the love that goes into a family work environment. And if you do things right and it's genuine and sincere, I mean, those people run through a brick wall for you.
Yeah.
And they'll want nothing more than to take phenomenal care of every customer that walks through the door.
Yeah.
Not everyone will pay for that level of service, but there's plenty of people in any market that will pay for that level of service. But what I find is people either underprice or they overprice. They want to charge prices like I do, but they're really not to where we are. They just have like a new store with new machines.
Right.
But it's unattended and it's not that clean and there's nobody there to help. And
mm-hmm.
within 3 or 4 years, it starts to look tired. And it's like, well, you were really high quality the day you opened, but you went downhill.
Jury is fast.
So, yeah. And so we're really big about staying cutting edge. Our entire business philosophy is really all about pushing the envelope mm-hmm. and being better tomorrow than we were yesterday. And so that's how a lot of these opportunities have come up, is because like we're never content. We're happy, but we're never content. We're always looking for a better way to serve people. And as we do those things and execute at a high level, we're also not afraid to charge for it, because our customers come in and they love us. I mean, they don't come in and say I'm price gouging them. They come in and say, "I'll happily pay double the price because you have triple the level of service
mm-hmm.
of the guy on the road."
Yeah.
And so, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and the laundry industry is no different. People just a lot of times are afraid of the unknown, or they're afraid they're going to lose half their business if they raise their price 50 cents. I've raised my top loaders from $2 to $3, which is a 50% increase in price, and not lost a customer.
Yeah.
And so it can be done. And I'm not unique. I mean, there's other people operating at a high level in our industry, as you and I know.
Yeah.
Not the only one. There's thousands of them.
Yeah.
And if they're not, charging a similar price model, then they're cutting themselves short.
Yeah. Very cool. Do you have any cards at all, or is it all coin?
Right now, it's all coin. Over the next couple of years, we're going to convert our last 2 quarter stores over to dollar coin.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we do that, we're going to add CCI Fast Card, a hybrid system, to those 4 stores. And so they'll operate on dollar coin, and they'll operate on the credit card, debit card, or the Fast Card,
right.
Phone pay app. And so they're suburban stores. They're not like high volume urban stores, if you will.
Uh-huh.
And so their volume is to a place where we can make that work long term. But quarters, I mean, it's, not that people aren't operating with quarters, because 2 of my stores are, but it's becoming the way of the dinosaur very quickly, especially if you're a high price leader.
Yeah. $10.
So that's our
quarters, a lot of quarters.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, yeah. I mean, if you use an 80-pound machine and you choose extra wash and extra rinse, that's $14.
Yeah.
It sounds insane, and that's a lot of quarters. But the reality is, it's also 8 loads of laundry that have been washed and rinsed twice.
Yeah.
So if they were heavily soiled, I mean, I always tell people, well, if they're heavily soiled, then you need to wash them and rinse them twice. Would you rather pay $20 or would you rather pay $14?
That's right.
Because it's all about value, and that's a big thing that I've learned in the business that I didn't always know, is that there's a big difference in price and value. And I refuse to compete on price. I always compete on value, and I always make sure that I win. But I can charge significantly more than you if I provide a much higher level of service. And my value proposition is way higher than yours is. And I really believe that's one of the things I really pound hard when I talk to people and consult and network with other operators, is I really try to pound into them that, for whatever reason, the laundry industry is probably as sensitive to price as any industry. Yeah. And there's plenty of industries that are sensitive to price. And so I really try to push back on people, and they, I hear all the time, well, you can do that, but I can't because of this. And, it's like I have no competitors or something. And so I was actually, as far as my story is concerned, I was a little happy that somebody built a Brady laundromat in the middle of my 4 stores, because that's like the worst case scenario, right? That's like every laundromat like there. Yeah. And so now I can tell people, look, I'm not unique, I mean, you can do this. And, there might be exceptions to that. There's some markets that are really, really insane, and I respect that. But the reality is, I think those are few and far between. I think most people are just selling themselves short, or they don't want to step up that value proposition. They like the idea of charging those prices, but they don't want to operate at that level because it's not easy. It's frankly kind of exhausting at times. I'm kind of obsessive, and I've built a team of people that are kind of obsessive with serving people, and they have the heart of a servant. They want to serve others, and they get satisfaction out of that above and beyond just their paycheck. And so we've been very intentional about that. And so I've said for 10 years, I'm building an army, and that's exactly what I'm doing, and I'm never going to stop.
I love that. All right. So I'm just loving your mindset and the way that you are approaching things and the way that you're thinking about things. I think if, anybody listening to this, in whatever industry, or even if they're not in the laundromat industry for life, I think they're going to take value from that. So
absolutely.
Awesome.
And I didn't create any of these. I stole everything that I just said. I stole every bit of it. So I don't own that. I don't own it. I just want to share it. I just want people to know, like, you can do this in this industry. Yeah, you can do it outside too. But yeah, I'm a thief in the night. I steal all kinds of good ideas.
Hey, and that's good. But it's not just what you're saying. It's the way that you're thinking, and I think that's valuable. So, do you have any sense of like an average, like how many turns per day they're doing, maybe outside of your pickup and delivery service? Do you have any sense of that?
Yeah, it's anywhere from 3 to 5, depending on the size of the machines. The smaller machines are closer to 3, and that's mainly because we have more of them. I mean, if we had a similar number, the turns would be a little higher. Yeah. And that's one of the things I've kind of learned in the business too is a lot of people, whether they're architects or manufacturers or distributors, and I'm not just saying the shady ones, because there are some unethical distributors out there. Right. But I'm talking about even ones that are well intentioned, that mean well. One of the biggest things I see in our industry is there's too much equipment and not enough space. I see it over and over again. Mm-hmm. So I've learned that myself, because I could say pretty much every one of my stores, if I didn't have my pickup and delivery business, which is a whole different animal, if I didn't have that, I mean, with my pickup and delivery business at that store, our turns per day are probably closer to 8 or 9. And so, that becomes really profitable really quickly. Yeah. But I believe when people are retrofitting stores, one of the mistakes I made early on was, okay, this is the footprint. It's obviously expensive to change the footprint. And so I'm going to see how many machines I can fit in this footprint. And that was really my only focus. Mm-hmm. And in the last 4 or 5 years, I've really kind of taken my operations knowledge to a different level. And I've went back and taken a lot of those machines out. And my turns per day have gone up, because I don't believe in having any machine out of order for, any more than a day or two, unless if I can help it. And so because of that, okay, well, if I'm operating after 5 years at 2 or 3 turns per day, that just tells me I have too many of those machines in there. Mm-hmm. And so I can pull 4 of them out and sell them, or give them to a friend, or move them to somewhere else, or redistribute them in a different way. And now, because all the machines are, you need more machines than you really need in your operations if you're not going to keep them all running. Mm-hmm. Because every time you lose one, you're losing capacity. Yep. But if you keep all your machines running at all times, and you're very hypersensitive and obsessive about that, then really what you need to do is just find the right fit. What's the right number? And you need to keep, in my opinion, your turns per day should be 4 or 5. You should never be less than that. But there's other things that go into that when it comes to like throughput. If you're going to have an operation that regularly is running 4 or 5 turns a day or more, then you have to set it up that way. You have to allow for very quick throughput. You have to have wide aisles. You have to have friendly attendants that are quick to help people and quick to clean up spills. And you have to have proper seating. And, you have to, there's things you have to focus on beyond just washers and dryers. Yeah. If people are waiting on a bottleneck for a dryer, then they're delayed. If they're waiting on a folding table, they're delayed. If they're folding out of the cart, they're delayed, because that's not how this should be done. Mm-hmm. But that's what happens in a lot of laundromats, because they put too much equipment in there. I've actually walked in laundromats that have had 30 or 40 dryers and had 4 folding tables. Jeez. And I'm just like, this is basic math. Like, this is basic addition and subtraction. Like, it's insane. Yeah. But it's common. Like, it's not even out of the norm. It's so common. Yeah. And I think a lot of distributors, very well-intending distributors, their mindset is, if you put more equipment in, then your pro forma goes. If you're doing a pro forma 4 or 5 turns a day, and you say, well, what we could do is put 6 more double loaders on the back wall. Well, they don't lower it to 3 turns a day on the pro forma. They leave it at 4 or 5, and all of a sudden decide it's going to do more revenue. Well, on paper, that may sound really good, but in real life, that's not how it usually works. The capacity is the capacity. Yeah. And so that's what I really focus on as I've evolved in this industry. And if you walk into some of my stores, that's not what you'll see, because that's not what I did 9 years ago. Yep. But I really believe that's a big part of our success. I mean, our new store is going to have 8-foot aisles. My thing is, if somebody is standing at a folding table on one side of the aisle and they're loading a washer on the adjacent side of the aisle, somebody should still be able to walk through there with a cart and not bump each other. Yeah. Well, that's proper throughput. That's how you get 4 or 5, or if you talk to these large operators in urban environments, these people are doing 8, 9, 10 turns a day. Yeah. A lot of times that's how they're doing it. A lot of times it is just a pure numbers game, and they're not built right, and people are bumping into each other. Right. But I really believe that when you talk about modernizing the laundromat industry, those type of things are every bit as important as technology, operations, all the other aspects. And a lot of times you can't do anything with that. If you take over a retrofit, I mean, it's really expensive to change the floor plan. Yep. It's really expensive. And a lot of times it's just not economical. But when people are building new laundromats, and I see some of I've seen laundromats that were just built 2 years ago. They spent $2.5 million on this place. There's 100 washers and dryers in there, and 6 folding tables, and 2 benches to sit on. First come, first serve. Everybody else stand. It's crazy. It's just absolutely crazy. It's I always tell my distributor, I'm they were 90% of the way there. They were so close. So close. And then they struck out, Yeah. So I don't know. I'm pretty passionate about that, because it's kind of been a sort of an aha moment for me over the last probably 4 years. that I'm always kind of pushing the envelope to learn and be better, like I said, tomorrow than I was today.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I'm not a quick learner. Sometimes it takes me 6 years.
For me too, man. Me too. So how many hours are you spending on your business a week on average?
Until about a year ago, I was spending, it varies. If out of pure necessity, I would say 6 to 8 hours a week total. I've one of the things I've also very intentionally done over 10 years is built my businesses so that operationally they don't need me. I call it the bus test. If Dave got hit by a bus today, would this thing collapse? Would everything I worked for the last 10 years in sacrifice collapse?
Yeah.
Or would it thrive for my family that I've left behind? And whether they want to sell those assets or run those assets, that's a different conversation. But if they collapse, they can do neither. And so that's also a big part of my mindset is operationally, I've built my businesses so that they don't rely on me. And there is an investment in that. I mean, you have to invest more heavily in managers, which make more money, and store managers and general managers and driving supervisors and third shift supervisors and all these things that a lot of owners do themselves. But I've been pretty intentional about that.
Yeah. Well, knowing everything that I know about you now after having talked to you for this long, I am pretty convinced that if you got hit by a bus, that bus would be totaled.
Yeah.
You're taking the bus down, it's not taking you down. So
yeah, maybe, I don't know. Yeah. But the reason I said the last year or so is in the last year, I've partnered with a technology company with our pickup and delivery business. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but the HappyNest model is kind of transitioning across the country. And now what I'm doing is spending most of my time mentoring and consulting for HappyNest. And they're bringing operators on our platform. They're utilizing their technology, their infrastructure, their digital marketing and customer service. And what they're doing is they've hired me as a consultant to basically train and mentor all of their operators. And so literally just yesterday, I had someone fly in from Florida and train with me and my team for 2 days. And then I'll mentor them on an ongoing basis on a long-term relationship. And so I'm not, the owner of HappyNest, the national brand. I'm owner of HappyNest in Cincinnati. So I'm an operator, but I've had a relationship with them for 3 or 4 years, and they've seen that I'm one of their top operators. And I also do a lot of consulting. I have a heart that I enjoy helping people. And so they approached me and they were like, we don't have time to support these operators to the level that they need to be supported if we're going to grow this into something and capture, the laundry pickup and delivery business is quickly evolving into its own industry. The laundromat industry, generates say $6 or $8 billion a year in gross revenue. And a lot of people think in the not so distant future that laundry pickup and delivery will exceed that as its own industry. And so there's more than one company that's, trying to capture that, and there will be plenty of room for multiple competitors. But we believe that HappyNest will be one of those national competitors. And a big part of that is finding the right operators in the right markets and mentoring them and training them and supporting them at a high level. Versus just shoot me an email, I'll try to get back to you. They can call me pretty much 24 hours a day and I'm available. And so, I was pretty sensitive about, I don't need a job. My wife always jokes the word job is a 4-letter word to me. So when we worked out this relationship, I was like, let me be clear. I don't need a job. I'm not an employee. I'm a consultant. But I do have the skill set and the time and the passion to take the things that I've learned in laundry pickup and delivery and teach others all over the country how to do this. And they've built a business model that allows that to happen. And I'm just a small part of that. But I'm essentially the operations, the mentor side of things. And so to answer your question, that's what I spend a lot of my time doing nowadays, because this model just kind of came out 9 or 10 months ago, and we've already got 25, 30 operators on the platform. So I've been busy, but I really, really enjoy it. I do. I enjoy helping others. And so it was a perfect fit for me. Yeah. So I spend a lot of time doing that. And then I do a lot on vision and marketing. Our new store wouldn't happen if I wasn't busy doing all kinds of work for a year or two before we actually, opened it. And you know what's required in that too. So there's a lot of work that happens before the work starts.
That's right. I know exactly.
So those are, a big part of building my business the way I did was for, like I said, to leave for my family, the bus test, all those things. But obviously I'm not planning on dying tomorrow. And so a big part of that too is as long as I am around, I'm freed up to do the things that will take our business to the next level. It kind of goes back to being happy but not content. I have no intention of just sitting back and writing what I've created for the next 30 years until I die someday. I have every intention of continuing to push the envelope. And if I can give back to the industry in any way, then I want to do that. If I can consult or mentor people, I want to do that. If I can literally grow from 4 to 5 to 10 laundromats or grow my pickup and delivery business into new markets or whatever, then I want to do that. And I don't believe I'm here to just sit around and watch TV. I like watching football and things like that. But at the same time, like I'm here to make a difference. And I believe that God's put me in the place I'm in right now for a reason. And I have every intention of pursuing that with everything that I have in me. And I don't believe it's for the money. I don't know the bigger purpose a lot of times. I just know that this is where I am. This is the knowledge, the expertise, the opportunity that I have. And so I want to find ways to give back. Of course, I'm limited by time. So I can't just be on the phone with people for 30 hours a day. So I have some capacity issues there. And that's why I started charging for consulting, where I did consulting for years for free, just because I enjoyed helping people. And I would sit on the phone for hours and hours with people. And I didn't want anything from them other than just, if I can help you by doing what we're doing, then I'm happy to do it. And then I realized wow, this is becoming really overwhelming, because the free consulting, that's a booming business.
You get what you pay for.
Right. Yeah. And I know you do a lot of consulting too. And so, I was like, well, I don't need the money, but I have to somehow justify my time, because I only have so much time in the day. And I was just getting calls and emails like crazy. And it was very overwhelming. And I was like, okay, the only way I know to separate the people that are serious from the people that maybe aren't quite as serious is to start charging, a fair wage for my service. And that's exactly what has happened. And so I didn't necessarily do it for the money. But that's kind of how we've evolved once again.
Hey, I love that. Keep evolving, keep stacking all those skills and talents, and where it takes you. Well, hey, this is the part where we like to call it our secret sauce.
Listen up, it's the secret sauce.
I feel like you've given us so much already. If you had to narrow it down to the one thing that you see working in your business that you think other laundromat owners can implement today or in the near future, what would that one thing be?
Oh my goodness, there's a bunch of things I could throw out for that one. If I had to say one thing, I would just say value. And that's a broad term, but I would also use words like genuinely caring, being passionate, wanting to serve your community, wanting to be better tomorrow than you were today, pushing the envelope. All those things fall under that same category of value. But that's ultimately really what's been a big market differentiator for me and my team and my businesses. And one of the things I try to teach other laundromat owners is if you're going to do this, you got to do it. You got to go 150 miles an hour, and you have to be passionate. You have to care. And it has to be sincere. You can't fake it, because people aren't stupid. They'll figure it out that you have an ulterior motive, or you're just trying to sell them this or whatever. And that goes down to other laundromat owners. If you're mentoring or consulting, it also applies to the self-serve customer that walks in the door. If they know you're just after your $4, it's they're going to see right through you. And they may or may not use you otherwise, but the reality is, when they see that you care and that you built a team of people that genuinely care, and when you fill something, instead of rolling their eyes and huffing off to get the mop, that they're like, don't worry about it, here. And then they'll give little Johnny a sucker to distract him so mom can do their folding or whatever. All those little things, helping people carry their laundry in, helping them carry their laundry out because they've been doing laundry for 4 hours and they're exhausted, giving them a free bottle of water for no reason. Absolutely no reason. I'll go to my store, I'll be collecting my vending, and, a little kid looking over my shoulder at the Snickers, and I'll be like, is it okay if he has a Reese cup? And I'll just hand it to him. And the kid thinks I'm a millionaire. He's like, you gave this to me for free. But little things like that, they go a long ways, but they they don't go near as far if they're not genuine.
Yeah.
And so that's really, that's my secret sauce, but it's very genuine. Like, so, I mean, it is a secret sauce in that sense, but it's really all about value, whether it's, the HappyNest pickup and delivery, or it's my drop-off services or my self-serve stores, or for that matter, if I'm ever ever a commercial, property owner and leasing space to other people. They care. They know that I care about their business in the way that I take care of my property.
Yeah.
Because I have some property owners that don't care. It's very obvious. And we don't have as good of a relationship. And I have a property owner that does care, genuinely cares about my business being successful. So those things go a long way no matter what industry you're in. I really believe that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why you've reached the level of success you have so far. And that's why, I'm pretty confident you're going to, fly to far higher heights going forward. So, yeah. I think that's an awesome answer.
Thank you.
So here's a little section we like to call pro tips.
Pro tips.
Specifically for people who, I think there's going to be a lot of people listening to this who are interested in the laundromat industry, who aren't in it yet. What is one tip that you would give to a prospective or a new laundromat owner, somebody who's looking to get into the industry? What's one tip you'd give them kind of going into it?
Oh my goodness. You mean from like a design standpoint or like a operation?
No, just so let's say I'm brand new and I'm looking to buy a laundromat. I want to buy a laundromat. What's one thing that I need to know going into it?
I think there's really three things I would tell that person and probably have told people. One of them is the beauty of being an entrepreneur and a business owner is you get to decide what your business is and what it isn't. No one can decide that for you. And that's that freedom of being able to make those decisions based on what's important to you is pretty powerful. And so take that seriously. Another one that I would say is that networking is really important. Get to know other people in the industry. There's a lot of knowledge and a lot of expertise out there. And there's a lot of people willing to help you on a lot of different levels based on how much time they have available. And if you do those things, one of the things you're going to learn in the process of networking is there's more than one way to skin a cat in this industry. It may sound like I have a negative association with an unattended laundromat. I do not. I know phenomenal laundromat owners that run very, very well run, very well unattended laundromats. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what I was. That's what I wanted to do at one point. And then the last thing I would tell them is don't be afraid to pivot. Because as you gain knowledge, as you gain expertise, like you're going to wake up one day and be like, a week ago I was a newbie, but now like people are calling me a veteran. How did that happen? Yeah. Like what, because that happened to me. And I was like, whoa, did you just call me a veteran? Like, did you just call me experienced? Like I still, 6 years went by and I still don't consider 10 years. I don't consider myself a veteran, but a lot of people do. And I guess compared to the guy that just bought a laundromat last week, I am. Yeah. And so those are, there's a lot that goes into those even, but those are the three things I would really tell them. I think maybe the fourth one I'll throw in there is to have a master plan, but going back to that pivoting, don't be afraid to pivot. Don't be afraid to change that master plan. I really believe that if you don't have a vision of where you're trying to go, you'll never get there. I really, truly believe that. And so it's okay to have a very defined vision of where you're going and then gain new information into the context and change that vision. That's okay. That's fine. You don't have to follow that for 40 years, but you still need to have a vision today, and that vision can change tomorrow. And if you use all those things in kind of a big picture environment, then you'll methodically make decisions based on all of those things without even really thinking about it. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And that's a lot of what I've done. And I've learned a lot of that along the way. Yeah. For 5 years, I didn't do a lot of the things we're talking about now.
Yep.
And the last 5 years, I've done a lot more of those things. And it goes back to why things like networking are important. Spending time at Clean Show and Excellence in Laundry and joining the CLA and being on Facebook groups and there's, getting the industry magazines and white papers and all these different things. Like there's so much information and so much value out there. And part of why I'm really passionate about our industry is because, like I said, I've stolen everything I know and have from someone in some way.
Yeah.
maybe a tweak here and a tweak here, and I melted my own model out of that. But like nothing I've done have I created out of thin air.
Yeah.
And so when you learn it, when you begin to understand your success is based on those things, then you really, it should humble you to the point of where you don't think you're spectacular. Yes, you're confident in your team. You know what you do is very good. Maybe even you know that it's at the top of the industry, but you also know that you're not special. This is a collaboration of all the things I've been talking about for the last hour.
Mm-hmm.
And so once again, I don't know if that makes sense, but that's just how my brain works. Like my brain never stops. I'm just like always digging and pivoting and focusing. And sometimes that causes me to do really stupid things. Well, I won't lie. Sometimes I do things that I'm like, what was I thinking? But I really believe that you can learn from that too. You can learn from your mistakes and your failures, probably more so than you can learn from your successes.
Yep.
So those are a lot of the key things that I tell people are a direct correlation of my success. And so I believe that they would be a key to their success. However, they meld that together for them.
Yeah. Man, that's gold. That's seriously gold.
Thank you. Thank you.
One other question before we wrap this up is, speaking of everything that you've been saying you've stolen, do you have a good resource that you'd recommend to other laundromat owners or prospective laundromat owners just to help them develop maybe even just some of the mindset that you have? I'm sure there's a ton, but you got one or two.
Well, one thing I'll add on to that, and I hope I don't ramble too much, is as much information and knowledge as there is in the industry, and there's a lot, you should tap into that. Mm-hmm. There's just as much outside of the industry, because I'm an entrepreneurial nerd. And what I mean by that is I love the process. It's not about the product. It's about the process. It's about the people. And I really, truly believe that. And so you can learn, I have many friends that are in businesses, that some own franchises and some have built franchises and some done different things. And I learned tons from them just by having lunch from them. Oh. Their business has nothing to do with my business, but some of the things I just told you, I most likely stole from them.
Yeah.
So there's a big part of that too that's really set pretty deep in me.
Well, Dave, this has been, I think epic is a good word to describe it. It's been really, really cool getting to talk to you and hear about your story and all your whole journey that's taken you to this point. And, we're going to have you back at some point to hear about this fifth store and to hear what direction you're heading there, because we know you're going to pivot, quite a few times now and then.
Yeah, who knows where I'll be. I may have a Dairy Queen inside of my laundromat. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
I appreciate you having me on. It's been great, talking to you and getting to know you. I know we're being recorded and everything, but at the same time, this is a big part of my success is doing what you and I are doing right now.
Yeah.
And just networking, meeting each other, getting to know each other. It's cool that we have the technology available for you to be in California and me to be in Cincinnati and to do this like so easily.
Okay.
And so there's that's fantastic. And I hope someday that we meet many times face to face, over the course of this, but it's been really cool getting to know you and kind of hearing your story too. So I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. And before I let you go, why don't you tell people how they can get in contact with you? Best ways they can get a hold of you. Maybe they want your consulting or they want to just, connect with you and network.
Yeah. They can reach out to me in a lot of different ways. I have a couple email addresses, dmenz@happynest.com, which is just D for Dave. And then my last name, MENZ, or Dave at Laundry Magician, is my consulting email address. And so they can send it there as well. I don't know if I'm supposed to do it on a podcast, but my cell phone number is 513-607-1511. And if I get overwhelmed, forgive me, but I do plan to get back to people. They can text me, they can call me, and we can chat and talk, and I'll see if I can help them. I don't claim to be an expert in every area of the industry, but the things that we've encountered and learned from, we feel like we have a pretty good grasp on things. But the last thing I'll tell people is I'm always doing local events or the Excellence in Laundry or the Clean Show and different things like that. And so obviously you have my face. And so you may see me there and I have no idea who you are. And so I love meeting people and getting to know people. So if people see this interview and they, see me at one of these events, just come up and shake my hand and introduce yourself. Cause I I can't have too many friends. Is kind of the way I look at it. So I like meeting new people and getting to know people, and if I can help them, that's fantastic too. So.
Awesome. And I'll have that information down in the show notes. So make sure you check that out and get in contact with Dave. He will be an awesome resource and sounds like just a cool guy. So get to know Dave, shoot him an email or give him a call on his cell phone.
Yep, absolutely.
That would be awesome. All right, Dave. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. Sure. And man, I can't wait. Hopefully we'll get to meet up here soon. I'm sure at like a clean show or something.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
But hopefully before that, we'll get together.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks again for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Wow. I mean, just wow. If you're still here, I don't know how you couldn't be. Just soaking all that up from Dave. But if you're still here, then hey, congratulations to you. You made it through. This is a long episode, but jam-packed full of great practical tips, but probably even more so, just mindset tips. And, one of the big things that I pulled away from this episode is just that keyword that kept coming up over and over, which was value. Dave is all about value and bringing value to customers. And sometimes I think it can get easy, at least for me, maybe you feel this way too. The laundromat industry can be kind of a relatively hands-off business. It doesn't require your full attention all week long necessarily. And so I can lose sight of, how am I bringing value to my customers? And, Dave is just hyper focused on that. And that's what he's built his business on. And it has served him well. And so I'm definitely bringing that away from this episode and from talking with Dave and getting to know him just as a person. And I hope you're bringing something like that away too. I'm positive that everyone listening to this brought something valuable away from it. So thank you again for listening to the Laundromat Resource Podcast. This is Jordan on show number 2. We'll see you next week. Signing off.